All right, there we go. So thanks for joining, and welcome to session 2 of the webinar series that we're running in March here. I did want to use March as an opportunity to take advantage of all the pretty neat things that are going on throughout the month. As part of the campaign that's happening for National Engineering Month all across Canada here. If you want to find out any more about the things that are happening as part of National Engineering Month, you are welcome to check out the webinar that we ran last week. It is available for replay. If you're interested, just let me know and I can send you the link for that. But I wanted to spend my energy, my focus today on the question that we get asked the most when it comes to people that are going into classrooms or doing some volunteer work with kids. And that is, what should I do? What activities should I do? So very, very common question that we get asked when people are just getting... So sorry about that. I'm home today with a pup who just is trying to protect me from a vicious cat in the backyard. But anyways, so just getting back to the question about activities. So it tends to be a question we get kind of first thing when people are just thinking about getting involved or maybe have just gotten involved. And it also tends to be a question that we get sort of as people use up their standard activities that they're used to facilitating or have maybe done in the past. So I wanted to help you guys out as much as I can with some of the experience that we have on the work that we've done with connecting with kids, thousands and thousands of kids across the province. So hopefully you can take some good ideas away, or maybe some sources of inspiration for the next time you're in the classroom. So diving right in, I did want to take a second just to get everybody thinking about selection criteria when it comes to sifting and sorting and filtering through the plethora of activities that are out there. You know, a lot of times I'll start, even if somebody contacts me and says, hey, I'm working with a class that's doing a unit on space. Can you help me out with some ideas? And I'll just really just hop on Google and start typing, but it can be a little bit overwhelming. So because like I said, there is a lot out there. So some things to consider when you're looking at how to sort and filter through all that data. A lot of sites are sortable and filterable by age or grade level, so that's really helpful. But also don't limit yourself. In some cases, putting in an age or a grade level in your selection criteria can have the opposite effect, can be more limiting than you want it to be. And I've had really great experience with taking activities designed for different grade levels, so maybe a younger grade, and scaling it up to a higher grade level, like maybe grade 9, 10, 11, just by adding in some complexity. So using the activity as a starting point and just playing around and adding some complexity in, or the reverse, taking a really complex activity and sort of stripping away and making it really, really simple can work as well. Thinking about some of the interests that the particular class that you're connected with, or young people that you're connected with might have. So depending on, again, they're usually connected to their age or grade level, what they're into. I've got 2 boys, grade 3 and 5 right now. and they're in hockey playoffs. So hockey is in the forefront of our minds right now. So interesting side note, the Toronto Maple Leafs actually have a really neat STEM program. So get online and check that out if you think hockey might be something that will be a great way to connect with the kids. But I also have a 12-year-old daughter, and she will tell you that hockey is ruining her life. So probably not the best thing to approach her with her. But just sort of holistically thinking about the age of the kids and what they might be into, any sort of fads or trends that are out there right now. There was, I think it's a couple years back now, but fidget spinners were, the coolest thing. And I saw lots of really neat activities about how to DIY your own fidget spinners. And you could do some really neat, integrating some really neat STEM concepts with those, and forces and materials and all that kind of stuff. So just considering those interests. And then, of course, curriculum alignment, definitely staying well connected with your teacher teacher partner, to make sure that you're able to support them in the work that they have to do, those boxes that have to get checked. There's again, you can use a lot of creativity when it comes to an activity, and maybe you found something that doesn't at first glance appear that it's directly connected to the curricula that you're trying to achieve, but with a few tweaks, or maybe combining two activities together, you can create those links. And then the last thing on here I wanted to mention was local connections. So whenever possible, it's really powerful to be able to find things in your local community, things the kids would know about. Maybe there's a new building being built, or a new bridge that's going up, or some work being done at the local wastewater treatment plant. Just local things that the kids can connect to. It has a really powerful effect, because if you're able to talk about it, maybe come up with some solutions to some problems that they might be having with that project, then every time they drive by it, or pass by it when they're out and about with their families, they can point to it and be like, hey, we worked on that at school, and here's what we did, and here's how I solved the problem. They come up with some awesome examples. Again, a personal example here, pulling out of my past. I live in Orangeville, and in Orangeville, there's a lot of kids that play lacrosse. And I was chatting with one of the lacrosse moms, and she was saying that they were having a problem because one of the arenas where the boys play, the lighting is really bad, and it makes it really hard to see the ball. And we were chatting about how we really need to be able to get a group of kids, maybe in a classroom, or at a group of Girl Guides, or at one of their meetings, or maybe a STEM camp in the area, and put those kids on that problem, because it's a really relevant problem for them. It's something, again, it's local. They know that arena. They're in it all the time, and they can connect to it, right? They're like, yeah, I do have a hard time seeing the ball. And interestingly enough, it was her own son that came up with the problem to that solution. She had been investigating, replacing the lights and all this lighting system that was going to be involved, and it was complicated and expensive, and just a list of problems to overcome. And her son was like, "Hey, Mom, how about if we just change the color of the balls? is that allowed?" And so anyways, it all worked out. They do use different color balls in that rink now, or that arena, interestingly enough. But just a good example of how powerful those connections can be. So now every time kids are in that space, they have pride and feel really good about the impact that they were able to have there. So before I get into some specific activities, I do want to take a second and step us back to our overall messaging strategy. If you were part of the orientation kickoff session we did back in the fall, you probably saw this formula up there. And I'm always just very cautious anytime somebody tries to ask me about what activity they should do. I'm always just very cautious to jump right into the activity and get into the sort of the mindset of focusing on that activity and losing some of that impact. So in keeping with that practice, I'm going to do it again today. And just really a refresher or a reminder, hopefully for most of you, that the impact comes from adding the activity to a message. So even thinking about some of those, I'll go back one slide, some of these selection criteria that we were talking about here, those can integrate into the messaging strategy that you want to use that for that activity. And how that combination of the hands-on and the science and the application of the activity integrated with the story element, the messaging element, is going to lead you to that, the kids to that that place of, wow, I didn't know that, or oh my gosh, this was the best thing I saw today. And that's where you're going to get those kinds of emotional responses. And really, we're looking to create those emotional responses because the kids aren't going to remember the activities. They're going to remember the feelings that they had during those activities. So I can spend an entire webinar talking on that, but I know we're here today to talk about activities and where to find them. So I do want to make sure we get some time to talk through some of the recommendations and resources that we have. So here's an example that I thought I would just spend a few minutes talking through. This one is one that we call food technology. And this one came, actually, we developed this activity ourselves. And it came about because we were invited to put on a workshop with Google Shops. So it was a thing where we went into a Best Buy, and they had this really neat little sectioned off area set up where every week different presenters would come in, and they would do different workshops with different audiences. And one month they happened to be focusing on kids, so that's how we got involved in it. But we wanted to get our heads around the idea of technology and what is technology. And here we are with Google in a fancy Best Buy with all this technology all around us, and we wanted to turn it on its head or on its side a little bit and get kids thinking about really what that word technology means. So we designed this workshop to illustrate, demonstrate the process of converting wheat berries into flour and the different ways you can use technology to do that. So we had them grinding up wheat berries with a mortar and pestle. So, that represented really old-fashioned, very simple technology. And then we talked about advancements in technology. So we moved from the mortar and pestle, we moved to a pepper grinder, so a semi-automated process, all the way to an automatic coffee grinder, where you just had to press a button and the flour came out. And we were able to scale this activity. So there were some challenges with the setting we were in. We had kids that were sort of age, I would say about 6 all the way up to probably 12 years old. So it was really interesting because we were able to scale this activity and keep it really simple in the sort of the way I just described. Or we were able to complicate it a little bit or add complexity into the activity by, for example, with the older kids, we had them do an extra step and consider how they could decontaminate the wheat berries. So we threw in some pom-poms and some peppercorns into the raw materials, into the wheat, and we had them, and we provided them with some different other kinds of technology, I guess, on how to remove that contamination before getting it into the processing. So anyway, lots of neat stuff you can do there. You can also add in more complexity around calculating yields. You get X amount of wheat berries is going to convert into X amount of flour, and there's going to be losses within your process, and how can you minimize those losses? And so some really interesting conversations you can have there. And then matching that up with the messaging is where we really got the wow factor. So one of the reasons I picked this example is because I was there. I was personally there when this workshop was being run, and I was amazed at how impressed the kids were to see flour come out the other end. They were so excited. You can see at the bottom of my slide there, I've got some of the kids' responses. Wow, I just made flour. I didn't know engineers did that kind of stuff. And lots of kids telling me, and parents and saying like this was the favorite activity of the day. And I don't know why it surprised me so much, but I guess things we take for granted, right? Just knowing flour is going to come out the other side. But being able to message that, I think, was an important part of helping the participants get to that emotional response. So I was talking to them about how it's really important that we have flour available because let's think about all the things we use flour in, right? We all are, we eat a lot of bread. Did you bring sandwiches to school all week? I bet your mom makes awesome cookies. So having that available to us is really important in our everyday lives, and how STEM professionals can play a part in making this critical part of our food supply available to everyone, and at low costs. You can talk about that as well, and then the messaging around technology. So circling back to what I was saying at the beginning about this idea that it's not just that thing in your pocket or that device you pick up when you get home. Technology is truly helping us improve efficiencies, get access to clean water. It keeps us warm in the winter. So it's so much more than just there's just so much more to it than what they thought kind of coming in. I wanted to highlight a few other great ones. So when we get asked to come and do a conference with a bunch of kids, there are some go-to activities that I will always use. The food technology is one of them. There's another one called Water for the World. This one was actually developed by the Engineers Without Borders Toronto Pro chapter. And they did it quite a few years ago now, I believe, as part of National Engineering Month, coincidentally. But they've done some really great work over the years and have made this available to kind of the general public, so you can get access to the slides that they use, and they can tell you like material list, and I think they have a presentation that they will share. But it's around kind of, when you boil it down, the kids are making a water filter. So you have some dirty water and they're just using like cheesecloth and coarse gravel and fine sand and a few other things, I think cotton balls to filter the water. But the reason that I really love the Water for the World workshops is that they also integrate the global aspects and financial impacts, as well as literacy. So it's really interesting. So what happens is each team, so we usually try and do this in groups of or teams of kids, but they are assigned a country. And so I think someone's Canada and someone else is United States. But then there's some countries that don't have as much, their GDP is lower, so they just don't have as much money to spend. And they also have they don't have the same access to education, so their literacy rates are lower. And so the way they integrate that into the workshop is by making all the teams buy their supplies. And so each team is given a certain amount of money depending on which country they're assigned. So obviously USA gets the most money, and then it progressively gets less and less. So the teams with the least amount of money have to get really creative and strategic in the way they're building their filters. But we also provide each team with a set of instructions. And for the teams that aren't able to read in the same way, their instructions are sort of garbled. So there'll be words that are like symbols instead of letters, so the kids can't read it. And so it really just, again, it sparks an opportunity to have some great conversations about why that is, and integrate that global aspect and messaging into the activity. So this Water for the World is one that's designed with the messaging kind of integrated right into it. So it makes it really easy. The underwater adventure and emergency response, those are two other activities that we have designed here at Engineers of Tomorrow. The underwater adventure is a coding simulation, but done with human robots. So pencil and paper and human robots. And then the story around it is that there's a hazardous waste has fallen into the ocean, and you have to navigate a robot. You have to code a robot to go and retrieve this hazardous waste and rescue it and keep everybody safe. And emergency response as well is message around spill response. So what do you need to do? So again, we've designed these activities with the messaging integrated right into them. So if you're just starting out and you're not as sure what we mean when we say integrate the messaging, these are great places to start because we tell you how to do it, right? It's embedded into the design of these, the instructions for these activities. And bonus, they're all in the program guide for you. So if you didn't get the link to that previously, I have included it in this slide deck, which I will send out to everybody, so you can find that there. Where to find great activities? So I gave you some examples. Those were sort of like I said, our go-to, our two thumbs up activities, but there are so many great activities out there. Like, we really don't need to create our own. We don't have to go far to find inspiration. So here are some ideas for you. The Engineers of Tomorrow website. So there's the ones I mentioned, plus we have other places and other ideas on there. The program guide, have a look in there. IEEE.org, discovery.org, and teachengineering.org. Again, these are my top 3 go-to sites when someone asks me for a specific workshop on, I'll use the example from before, space, because these ones are really easy to sort and filter, and you can specify the length of time you want and the ages and the topics, and if you want hands-on and if you want it to be a presentation. So those 3 are my 3 favorite websites. But also, like I said earlier, like just typing it into Google and seeing what you get is a great source of inspiration. And each other. I wanted to dedicate one slide to this. I really want to encourage everyone to share your ideas. We've dealt with thousands of volunteers that are going into classrooms, and I've seen it work really well when sort of a cluster of volunteers that are geographically kind of located near each other, when they can, they sometimes meet up in person, or I've seen them set up different online databases, and by the way, we're happy to help with that if that's something you're interested in. But different ways of sharing resources works really, really tremendously well, because again, it's just based on your experience, right? So you can go in, you can try something out and see what works, see what doesn't work, and then bring that back to your peers and keep improving, right? And then don't forget to share your experiences with us too. So we love to hear from all of you. We love to hear about the activities that you're doing. We're always happy to share those with our network of awesome volunteers going into classrooms. Just so different ways you can do that, depending on sort of what you're comfortable with. You're welcome to just email me and let me know how things went. You can join our LinkedIn group if you're not already in there. Just head over to LinkedIn and look for the Engineers of Tomorrow group, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And Twitter is another great spot to send out some quick notes on, what I love most about Twitter is when people use it to show the impact. So showing, now you have to be careful, you can't always take pictures of kids' faces, but maybe showing their hands, or going onto Twitter and putting in some of their comments, like that kid that came up and said, wow, now I want to be a researcher when I grow up, or whatever it is, wow, that was my favorite activity of the day, and show a picture of the thing that they built. So Twitter's a great place for that. So yeah, I just wanted to take a minute to remind you to share those experiences with us, because it gives you a chance to also kind of close the loop on the experience that you're having yourself too, to share it with someone else and connect with someone else, and say, hey, I had this great experience, and and what next? Like, let's do it again. And so it really is important to remember to do that whenever possible. So I'm just looking at the time. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to ask a few questions if you have any questions. So what I will do now is I'm just going to pause the recording. I will say goodbye to everyone who is going to be watching the replay, and I will open up for questions.